testimony before a grand jury.
That's not
But
true.
I must say,
That's true.
Mr. Sharpton, it seems somewhat disingenuous to suggest that nothing would come out of Miss Brawley's testimony. She, after all, is the only one who can possibly know what happened.
Well, Mr. Copper, let me say this. First of all, according to the New York State law, Public Officers Code 3, someone that holds a public office can be required to testify before a grand jury, or they forfeit their office.
That's not true.
Well, let me finish.
That's not true.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Hines, if you're the legal expert on this, my understanding of the Constitution is that no one can be required to testify.
Your understanding is absolutely correct.
Okay, well, let me finish my point on Ms. Brawley.
Here is,
no, you asked me a point about Ms. Brawley. Can I finish answering that? No, you interrupted me, Mr. Hines. I didn't interrupt you.
Well,
in terms of Ms. Brawley,
I'm not going to shout with you. You're a much better shouter.
Let me just finish what I'm saying.
You're a much better shouter than
Well, I might be a better prosecutor too, but let me just say this.
I doubt that.
Ms. Brawley had chosen not to cooperate when she brought us in. And you played a tape where she said herself that she was in full agreement with that. I think the issue here is that with all of the litany of cases over the last several years in which Bob Abrams was Attorney General, that blacks have not received justice under the present grand jury setup. There is a prevalent feeling among many blacks, and the Brawley family is among them, that they cannot trust a secret grand jury proceeding to get justice. And I think people need to deal with that issue.
Mr. Can I interrupt for a moment?
Go ahead.
The issue is justice for Tawana Brawley, and no amount of rhetoric, no amount of rhetoric can make that happen.
Mr. Mason, gentlemen, I'll tell you what, we can try if we want to have all four of us talking at the same time, and then we can ensure that none of us will be heard.
Do you mind if
you let Mr. Hines finish, I'll come to you, Mr. Mason, right after.
As I was saying, Ted, that no amount of rhetoric can make that happen. Only the rule of law can make that happen, just as the rule of law operated effectively in Howard Beach.
It did not. It did not.
Okay.
What happened in Howard Beach, we received the same kind of criticisms, Ted, that we're getting now in the Tawana Brawley case. Joe Hines did not come out when we were receiving all that criticism. Alton Maddox was vilified in the National Law Journal, in Newsday, and local media behind his stance on Howard Beach. And it was only after thousands of black people took to the streets that Charles Hines was appointed special prosecutor.
Well, actually, we've come to kind of an interesting question now, because it seems to me that part of what you two gentlemen are trying to do is perhaps to change the legal system in the streets.
Absolutely.
Now, that may or may not be a commendable thing to do, but let's just talk about it for a moment. To what degree are you trying to do that?
We're trying to establish the fact that there is a prevalent racial problem in the state of New York, probably around the Northeast, but particularly in this state.
No, I know you've said that already 2 or 3 times on this program.
I'm trying to answer you.
No, my question was whether you're trying to change the legal system in the streets.
We're trying to change the legal system in the streets, in the courts, and in other areas that are available to us. We are trying to use whatever is available to us to say that people that do crimes against us are not being penalized for it.
The grand jury is
even in Howard Beach,
Mr.
2 of the people that were convicted are home tonight. Let's not talk about Howard Beach as some great model. 2 of the convicted people and the 3 that were convicted in Howard Beach are home tonight.
They are free on bail pending appeal. And if
they were black, they would not have been given bail, in my opinion.
That's just not, well, in your opinion doesn't meet the facts at all of how our criminal justice system operates. Bob Abrams stands ready to bring justice to this child, and you're preventing it.
That's not correct.
You're preventing it.
That is not correct.
And that's the continuing shame that what you're doing to that child.
Mr. Hines, I think the shame is for you, an employee of Mr. Abrams, to sit here and act like you're objective when you're not. You have to go and get your check from us. I understand that, Charlie. You got to get paid. But we're not going to give this girl to a grand jury that would give her mother 30 days in jail and not even try to call in those that are responsible. I don't care how much they pay you, they do not pay us, and we will not give Tawana Brawley to a man that in 12 years has never opened his mouth as Attorney General.
Mr. Sharpton, hold on just one second, Mr. Hines. While it is true that Mr. Hines is on the government payroll, it's also true that you, Mr. Sharpton, have been raising money for the Tawana Brawley case.
Where?
Mean, this is just one of the many things that your friend Perry McKinnon is charging.
Well, he charged it, and has he established that? Tell me where we raise any money for the Brawley.
Well, you tell me. Hold on just one second.
Tonight from the relative
hold
of
on
Mr.
just
McKinnon.
1 second, Mr. Mason.
And the relative said
Mr. Sharpton,
he had a medical discharge from the Army. He has mental problems over a period of years. They have tried to assist him with that. He is going to go public with us tomorrow to show that this man, who now the governor has asked for us to be disbarred, arrested, Bob Abrams has embraced as the key witness in this case, is going to be discredited himself by his family.
Why can't you find it, Vernon, why can't you find it in your heart to urge this child to testify before the grand jury so she can get justice?
Because Tawana Brawley has no faith in Bob Abrams, and you know why, Joe Hines. Bob Abrams has never tried a criminal case. You would not ask your daughter to be subjected to that. That's just number one.
Bob Abrams has dozens and dozens of trial lawyers.
All of the things that he's done over the last several years. You know, as we have tried to get justice for Eleanor Bumpers, Michael Stewart, all of these cases, these 300 transit arrests that were made and fabricated, Bob Abrams has not opened his mouth. Tawana Brawley has asked that he step aside.
Mr. Mason, you've got to forgive me. Mr. Sharpton and I still have a little bit of business that we've got to conclude, and then we're going to wrap this program up. Now, you see, you bristle somewhat righteously against my having raised charges.
No, I didn't. I asked you to substantiate.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's precisely the point I wanted to raise with you. You see, your client, not your client, the person that you are advising right now, has also raised some rather serious charges.
And is prepared to back them up.
And is not prepared to substantiate them, is not prepared to substantiate them under the current system as it exists.
That's not true.
At your advice.
That is not true. She is not prepared to substantiate them to one that she feels is leaning toward covering it up.
Now,
she is prepared within this system.
Hold on, Mr. Sharpton. We're talking about a young lady who was 15 years old when it happened, who is now 16 years old.
And who you just played a tape of saying that she's full of caught of what is going on in terms of the whole strategy, whose mother is sitting in a church right now because they have firm beliefs that Bob Abrams is part of the cover. Yeah. Not against the system. Give us another prosecutor in the system.
Mr. Sharpton, you are telling me, at some length I might add, that this young lady is sophisticated enough about the means by which justice is or is not perpetrated in New York State, that without your counsel, she has come to the NAACP that she doesn't want this case to be tried.
They fired the NAACP
and sent for us because they didn't want to cooperate. We didn't start the non-cooperation. We were brought in after the non-cooperation was established, Ted. Their lawyers within ACP, they were fired because they wanted to cooperate.
Gentlemen, this is one of those nights when I wish we could go on for a while. We've already gone way beyond our time. I thank all of you for joining us this evening. Good of you to come in. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.